every trick in the book. I'll try my best to get you hooked. I'm gonna use every trick in the book. I'll try my best to get you.
A quick introduction for describing my side. My face is forgettable, a regular guy. Now I can be anyone, anywhere I aim. I just need the mindset, a story and a name. Just started working here, haven't got my badge yet. My hard hat and clipboard's the same as all access. Data center rooftop, finished with my case soon. Taking people's lunches from the bags up in the break room. Talking through my story, recited it with confidence. Make you feel at ease, disregard your common sense. Now I'm in, hope you're ready for the consequence. Cause I'm picking locks, slipping off with all your documents. Play the subconsciousness, never regress. Got the technique set, cashing every e-check. Set them up, knock them down, premise with my pretext. Better stay alert.
So, well, welcome to the social-engineer.org podcast number 14.
Oh, sorry, number 14.
Thanks, Dave. I tell you, I was waiting for Dave, but Dave, again, you're calling us from some crazy location. What are you doing now?
I'm actually on the golf course right now. It's raining, though.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So you're golfing in the rain.
I'm golfing in the rain, and I'm on the podcast. Yeah, it's
Yeah. You know what makes it really epic is if you got struck by lightning while on the podcast.
Well, I'm sitting here looking at the flag here, and I got a cigar in my mouth. I'm just enjoying the nice times out here, man.
Jeez, man. Oh,
number 14.
Yeah, thanks. As you can tell, our panel's with us. It's Dave on the golf course. And, Mud, how are you doing, Mon?
Good, Mon.
Good. And Jim or Elwood, you're with us, too. How are you doing today?
I am okay.
Well, not as good as Dave on the golf course, huh?
Well, hey, I'm in an office, not out on a golf course, so.
Oh, here.
Then again, I don't know how to play golf, so I'm not sure that me being on a golf course would be so good.
That really wouldn't work too well for you either.
Chase the gopher or something, I don't know.
So hey, I got a bunch of feedback on the new music. We got a lot of people who like it, like the dual core music, the song that he made for us called "Trust Me," all about social engineering, the new intro music there. So he released that as well as another track that everyone can get for free on their website, dualcoremusic.com. So I just wanted to give a shout out to them. We'll do it at the end again, so you can get that URL. But if you're liking the new songs for the S.E.e podcast and you want to check out more of his stuff, just go to dualcoremusic.com.
We need to get him on the show, too.
I'm sorry?
We need to get him on the show.
I know, we do. This would have been a great opportunity. It's just the timing and everything didn't work out because, Dave really can't argue too much about when he was singing a song, about how much he slapped Dave down at All in Vegas.
Oh, man, he still owes us that one, doesn't he?
He does. We talked about it last month a little bit, and Dave kept trying to play the Price is Right music over it. Now that he's on a golf course with a cigar in his mouth, probably driving a ball, and he can't argue with us, we can have a nice, lengthy conversation about Dave's inability to beat dual core and All. Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't put it past Dave to have some backups in place,
That's true.
I wouldn't put it past him. I really wouldn't.
We should at least invite Mateo in or something, and ask him to talk about how bad Dave got pawned, or something like that.
Sure. We need to do that. We need to do it. We'll bring Mateo. We'll bring dual core. We'll have a Bash Relic.
That'd be great.
Podcast.
We love you, Dave. We love you.
I love you too. Sorry, I'm back.
I told you.
No, I don't know what happened. I got full bars, and all of a sudden I just got to drop a call. It must be that golf course.
Great.
I don't know. Smoking a cigar might have interfered.
Here's what I would say then. Don't listen to the first few minutes of the podcast, okay?
So what's this podcast about then, Chris?
Well, before we get to that, I've got some news I want to talk about, and then we'll get into that because we had a lot of stuff happen over the last month. We released the CTF report for the social engineering contest, the How Strong Is Your Schmooze? And that kind of went ballistic. I mean, I think we're all a little shocked as still how many people are talking about it. News reports that came out all about it. We've had I don't have the exact number right here with me. We were trying to obtain that, but I know we've had thousands of downloads of the report so far. Maybe I'll get a number and put it in the podcast notes if we decide to do that. But it
made so much news. My wife actually heard about it and read through it.
Really?
And I didn't. Yeah, I mean, I was telling her about it, but then she heard it from someone at work, and so she got interested and downloaded it.
It's crazy because it's like all over. If you just go to the web and you look for it, it's not just like in hacker news places. It's not like in just dark reading and things like that. It's all over. CNET, CBS News. It's everywhere. It's funny too because I got my family who's not even in technology calling me and saying things like, "Yeah, I saw this report that you're involved in. What's this all about?" So,
son, what have you done now?
Yeah, exactly. What is this malicious report that you released on these companies that we might work for? So that's been pretty cool. Getting a lot of interest in the site. I think another big thing that occurred is we had a lot of good feedback on the recent newsletters that have all been focused on neurolinguistic hacking, and the NLH thing kind of really took off as a lot of people are curious about the new terminology, but also how it's being used in social engineering. I was invited down to Texas to give a speech for a big bank on that topic, and really was received very well. I was kind of not sure how well it would because the people that were in the room, all the people that were involved in hearing the speech, not all of them were like red teamers or social engineers. So I didn't know how it would be received, but it came over really, really well. As far as what they had to say about the speech afterward and the information and using it. So there'll be a lot more on that, I think, coming up in the next newsletters and as we continue forward with the S.E.e.org website. And, we never talked about that either much, how we set up the shortened version. Everyone was saying, we need something shorter than social-engineer.org. So we actually set up S.E.e.org to forward to it, and we never really talked about it. So it was like 5 people that knew.
Didn't you tweet about it or something?
I think I might have, but I was in the channel the other day and I posted a link and they're like, "Oh, is this a new site?" And I'm like, "No, it's SEEorg.org goes to the social dash engineer."
I specifically told you, tweet, twat. Don't you remember?
Well, maybe I thought you said twat tweet. I'm not sure. I can't remember, so I might have got confused. So anyhow, here's the release of it. SEEorg.org is forwarding to that site, and then I guess we will tweet about it.
Tweet you twat, huh? That's a new one.
Yeah, that's a new one. He comes up with new ways all the time to use that word. So he's getting more
catchy.
inventive.
I wonder if we can get dual core. Can we get dual core to do like a song on that?
A tweet twat song?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, well, I don't know if I want to try, but we'll say. So let's see, sponsors. Let's thank everyone. Of course, much hates when I do this, but OffSec, we can't thank you guys enough. All of us here with the OffSec team, all the support that we get with everything in the site and the podcast. CWC, again, came through with us for those reports that we used, issuing all over the world and really helping us out with getting the message out. That press release that they did, I think, got a lot of interest too. That was part of the reason that we had such a high interest level was their constant support in that too. And of course, the EFF. All of this wouldn't have happened with the CTF without the EFF, and their continual support with the podcast and other things really is helpful. And I know I talked about it a little bit last month, and I did not get all the pictures and everything up there from the Spy Associates gadget that we got, the live GPS tracker. We're still playing with that and a couple other new things, so I'm going to just say that I got to get some pictures and links up there for the things that we have so we can keep promoting those guys because they give us some pretty cool stuff to mess with. So anyhow.
Are you spying on your wife again?
Well, no. No, here's what happened. I had a lady. I got a good story that backs this up. I had a lady from a news media place call me and say, "Hey, I was after the CTF, I was checking out your website and I see that you do a lot of things that could be considered spying. I'm writing an article on GPS trackers. Do you have any knowledge or usage of them?" I said, "Well, I've used this one," and I linked her to the thing that we used back that was like that little magnet GPS that stored everything. She said, "How about live GPS tracking?" And I said, "I know they have them. I'm not sure if I used one, as of recent enough to talk about. So I called the guy from SPY Associates and said, hey, can you give me some info? Well, he did one better. He mailed me out like the best live tracking GPS. I mean, it's ridiculous. It has a GSM chip inside. It ties into the server plus what they call 7-pound magnet, so it just sticks inside anywhere in the car. And the battery lasts for 70 days. If you charge it, the battery lasts for 70 days.
Yada, what's the story?
Well, okay, anyhow, so I just stuck it on, I did the same thing I did before and got in the same trouble I did before. I stuck it on my wife's car just as a joke, just to see.
See? I told you.
And
now comes out the truth.
And then when she came home and I'm like, oh, you got to see this new device I got from SPY Associates. She's like, oh my God, if it's like some kind of hidden camera or something, we're going to have more problems. And I'm like, no, it's like a GPS tracker. I said, look, I just tracked everything, everywhere you went and your speed and Well, anyhow, you can guess the rest of the story.
Yeah.
So
you did get in trouble with your wife.
Yeah, I won't be posting the actual map of like where she went or anything, but you can get the
bruises that you had afterwards.
I might post some of the pictures of that, the broken limbs, so I can get some sympathy votes or something. But I wanted to go back to this NLH stuff because the NLH is the neuro-linguistic hacking, the name that we kind of coined and then started writing and talking about, has really generated a lot of interest with different people. I mean, not just like this big bank that we went and did the speech for, but there's a lot of organizations. I have another one in Norway and some others that are all emailing us wanting training or speeches in that particular topic. It's pretty interesting that kind of took off so much. And part of the research that we've been doing into NLH is about body language and nonverbal communication. So things like microexpressions, body language, vocal tones, all that kind of ties into the NLH. And of course, anytime anybody who does any research into body language reading at all is eventually going to hit the name Joe Navarro. So Joe is a guy who was a veteran of the FBI, 25 years. And he's got a really interesting story that I'm not going to give too many details out until we get him on, and then he can give us some of the details about it. But he's got like I said, a 25-year history with the FBI, and he learned from a very, very young age how to use nonverbal communication to read people's intents and what they were trying to say, because English was not his first language. So he transferred his life experience into serving at the FBI, and then was able to crack some pretty huge cases with the FBI using nonverbal communication, trying to determine when people were deceiving and so on and so forth. So he wrote quite a few books, has a website out there, has some training that, from what we hear, is some of the best training in the market on body language reading and nonverbal communication decoding.
His voice isn't going to sound like the nurse, is it, where we have to lock our wives in the cellar?
I mean, man, every video I watch of him, he's very smooth, but he's definitely not into like the NLP as much as the nurse. Like the nurse is,
Yeah.
I don't even want him like near my wife. That
no,
guy's
same here.
crazy.
Same here.
Yeah.
Okay, I was making sure.
But this guy would be afraid if I was in person, and you try to say one thing. I mean, I have this series of videos that he did where he analyzed political figures when they were campaigning, like Obama, McCain, Hillary Clinton, and he has all these clips that are just public news clips, nothing private, and he goes through them and he tells, here's what she's saying with her words, but here's what the body is saying. And it's pretty scary, like how after you see it and he pinpoints things, how you can kind of really pick it out and say, wow, this person is definitely saying something completely different than what the words are saying in their mouth. So he's pretty, he's of course an expert in that, been training people now. He left the FBI after 25 years, and he wrote a bunch of books and some training courses, and now training the federal government in many of these things and using this as a science. And I think for social engineering, this is probably a big hot topic that we really need to analyze a lot more.
I wonder what he does in his day job.
Yeah, I think he has a website that focuses on training and presenting. Yeah. He does a lot of public speaking and a lot of training in the nonverbal communication arena. He has some online training as well as live courses and speaking. It looks like from his website that much of what he does is travel around and talks about these things. He also does some training on, which is kind of an interesting twist on poker. Guys who play poker for a living being able to utilize the skills that he has in reading people across the table and their tells. Yeah, interesting. So we're going to get Joe in here in just a couple minutes and talk to him about nonverbal communication. Okay.
Do we have a title for the podcast?
We do. I believe I wanted to call it I See What You Were Thinking, with a different spelling on the C being like S.E.e, What You Were Thinking.
Misty.
Yeah, I'm smart like that. Usually it's you that comes up with the really catchy podcast titles.
It's difficult these days, man. With the economy and all that.
Okay. So we got Joe Navarro with us now. Thanks for coming on the show, Joe. We appreciate you being here with us.
It's a pleasure.
So I just wanted to start off a little bit, maybe for a lot of our listeners, because when I was reading your book, What Every Body Is Saying, and one of the things I learned about you that I did not know from previous watching videos and reading things about you on the web is that you actually came over from Cuba as a young child and didn't know any English when you came to the country. So you had to
that was a bummer. Actually, it's one of those things where when Fidel Castro took over and literally his forces took over our house, we fled and we came to America as refugees. But I'd been to Miami before on vacation, but I didn't speak. In fact, nobody in my family really spoke English, so it made it tough. But in a way, as I explain in the book that you're referring to, What Everybody Is Saying, it helped a lot because I think I went through with what every immigrant goes through, and that is when they arrive here, they've really got to be sensitive to body language because they don't speak the language. And I think that helped me to really learn to observe better.
So, I mean, how did you, just out of curiosity, how did you come up with, to understand? I mean, you were really young. I think the book said you were somewhere around 8 or so?
Yeah, I was 8. Well, I think even at a young age, we begin to pick up on social cues and so forth. So I don't think my experience was any different. Maybe mine from a survival sort of thing where we had to succeed and so forth was more important to me. And you sort of grow up fast when you have to go to work at an early age. But what's interesting is that, for instance, we know that babies as early as 11 months are already looking for cues from their mothers to whether or not they can do this or they can do that. So, and then we know that by the 3rd week, they're already mimicking us as far as squinting eyes and pursing lips and so forth. So I think at a very young age now, the research shows that we're extremely sensitive to body language.
Yeah, that's interesting. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about what exactly is nonverbal communication. So maybe we can define that as we enter the discussion about what it is that you were reading on these people when you came over.
Well, that's a good question because nonverbal. Everybody thinks nonverbal communications is just body language, and it's not. Under the umbrella of nonverbal communications, you have things like, for instance, emblems. So when you see a stop sign, that's emblematic. When you see words are in a way their own emblems or their symbols, which have meaning and so forth. The American flag has meaning. And when we look at things that communicate to us, to a navigator, the stars communicate to the weatherman, the wind, and so forth, and to even colors. If you look at, for instance, on television, there's a preponderance of the color blue, and there's a reason for that. And the blue tends to be very soothing, and so anything that communicates to us that's not a word is a nonverbal. And of course, body language falls under that, as does body mechanics, body movement. So, for instance, we differentiate between, when we look at a smile and so forth, versus our movement of our arms, which is kinesics. All that falls under the big umbrella of nonverbal communication. So as you can see, there's quite a bit, and that's why when we say that when it comes to interpersonal communication, that so much of it is nonverbal, it's because there's so many symbolic things that communicate to us.
That's interesting.
So I have a question then. With that being said, how much does cultural or generational issues play into nonverbal communication?
Well, that's a great question too. Well, first of all, there are certain things that we do that are universal, that are governed by the limbic part of our brain. I'll talk about that later. And for instance, if around the world, and it doesn't matter what culture you're in, when you see something beautiful, even at the age of 6 months, if you see something beautiful, your pupils dilate. And if you see something ugly, your pupils constrict. You have absolutely no control over that. So there's a nonverbal that is universal, controlled by the limbic system. But then there are the cultural nonverbals. So culture teaches us, for instance, in America, that we shake hands, for instance, more than we hug, that we wave to each other in a certain way, that we can only look at each other for a certain period of time. And then those are cultural things, how we walk. People don't walk the same way around the world. In some parts of the world, for instance, men will walk more heel to toe, and they angle the toes outward, and so forth. So that's cultural. And then we have behaviors that we learn within our own family. For instance, how we hold the fork, how we hold the knife. May not be representative of what the rest of society teaches, but that's what they teach at your house. So it's a great question. There's all sorts of behaviors and things that we do. Some are innate, some are cultural, and some are just personal.
So, and then that kind of ties back in, I would guess you would tie micro-expressions in with nonverbal communication also.
Well, yeah. I mean, micro-expressions, which Paul Ekman sort of discovered by accident in the early 80s, is really nothing more than an expression. It's smaller, it's faster, and so forth. But, any expression, whether it's micro or large or whatever, is going to be based on two things. Number one is, for instance, the limbic leakage. So you say something I don't like, and maybe I'll squint a little bit with my eyes, right? So now this is universal, but where society comes in is how much it allows you to do that. Or, for instance, let's use nose crinkle. That's a better one. So we crinkle our nose up when we go, ew, we smell something bad. That's also universal. But the culture you come in allows you to do it differently. So in England, where I've studied this, for instance, they can't grimace with a very large expression. But if you go to Brazil, society there permits you to do it with an exaggerated look. In fact, you see this at the dinner table where somebody brings something and you don't want it, and they look like almost they brought something horrid, but it's not. It's just that the social norm there is that you can exaggerate it. So you have a combination of both. But a lot of expressions, for instance, the look of contempt, that's universal, but there's a little bit of the social component that says, well, how much are you permitted to do it, and so forth, and even what your mother allowed you to get away with. I mean, it's let's not forget what we're taught by our parents.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Joe, I have a quick question. Of course, in our field, in social engineering specifically, many times you're supposed to give off a certain feeling to someone or try to influence them to do something. And
right.
I'm wondering, how effective can one really be in faking these nonverbals? I mean, can I pull off something that will actually convince someone that I'm feeling one way when I'm in fact feeling the other?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. That's what Academy Award-winning actors do. It can be done. In fact, we probably do it more often than we think. For instance, for the last 10 or 12 years, I've had to, tell my nephews that Santa Claus was coming tomorrow on Christmas Eve. And really sort of portray it rather convincingly, lest I spoil their magical day. So I think we do these things all the time. Now, people who pull off the Great Con, you're psychopaths to some extent. But look at, for instance, in espionage, intelligence officers do this all the time, as do undercover agents who, convince the mafia that they're okay and so forth. So it can be done. The obvious question is, well, how can you do that? And so to a great extent, it's mastery of nonverbals, it's mastery of mimicry, mirroring the behaviors that provide comfort and so forth, and transmitting, for instance, how we establish that we're honest and truthful, and how we establish veracity, truth, is through nonverbals. It's not through verbals. You don't make people believe you're truthful or trustworthy with mere words. You actually have to have the nonverbal component. So it can be done.
But now I'm thinking, like, as you're talking about that particular topic, there used to be a belief that faking a smile was very difficult because there was those ocular nerves that you couldn't trigger a certain percentage, and then they proved that more people can trigger them than they originally had thought. That was a good tell. Even putting a smile on, and you wanted to make believe you were happy or glad to see somebody, that was one way that you can tell if someone really is truly happy, is looking for that ocular nerve trigger. Are there tells where someone could look and say, hey, this person's faking that emotion, or this person's faking that action to make me think?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and that was an interesting study that just came out a few years ago. But in fact, if you look at, for instance, the Chinese have a saying: a laugh is not a laugh unless the stomach's involved, and that says a lot about when we look for the true smile. there's still a distinction, and I've seen thousands, obviously, of smiles over time, and I've studied them, where for the most part, when the face is truly relaxed and it's truly happy and truly content, you do have the engagement of the eyes and the mouth. And so forth, and you have the arching of the eyebrows. I've seen people fake it, where they're faking they're trying to fake a true smile. And, some people can get away with it. I still find that most people, there will be some sort of tension in the face. And I think it has a lot to do with how we feel around each other. I would find it almost impossible to fake a true smile around someone I dislike. I just find, even knowing this stuff, I just find that my face tightens up too much, and I think my smile would look contrived. And the other thing is the mistake that a lot of people who look at body language only focus on the face, and I'm not going to name any names to because that's not necessary. But there's a lot of researchers that assume that it's all in the face, and it's not. You have to look at the whole body. And that's something that I quickly learned as an FBI agent, is that you have to look at the body and tell you, well, what does the whole body tell you? What does the forehead tell you versus the eyes versus the nose versus the cheeks versus the mouth? I still hear people say, well, the face this and the face that. That's like saying there was an accident in Florida. Where in Florida? What part of Florida? What street? And where are the shoulders? What are the hands doing? Are the hands relaxed when they're smiling, or are they contracted? Are the feet relaxed? Are they pointing in the opposite direction? I mean, I look at the whole body and say, well, what does it say? And then I add it up and say, okay, well, that looks like a genuine smile, and I see that the shoulders are relaxed, and I see that the space between fingers is relaxed, or there's more space between the fingers and so forth, and you can see the thumb. It hasn't been hidden. So you look at the totality of it, and that's how you make a more disciplined assessment. But to just look at, where is it the eyes and the face, that's a bit narrow.
I got a question on that.
Yeah.
When you're reading someone's nonverbals in that manner, how much does baselining play into it? Is that an important aspect of this?
How much does face what? I'm sorry.
Does baselining
Well, you got a baseline. I mean, you have to baseline everything. I mean, you really have to see the person with in as much of a relaxed state as possible. You have to see them, without them realizing, hopefully, that they're under scrutiny and so forth. Which is why, when people ask me, well, I remember when I was in the FBI, and people would say, well, you got somebody coming in at 2 o'clock. Why are you in the parking lot? And I would say, well, I want to see what they look like as they're driving into the parking lot and they're getting out of their car. I want to see how they're walking into the office without them knowing that I'm looking at them. And I want to see how they carry themselves, and you would often see people who were worried. They'd sit there and they'd have 3 cigarettes before they'd come in the office. And I'd say, okay, well, they've got something to worry about. Or women would begin to touch their necks and so forth before I even begin to talk to them. So you need to norm as much as you can, because what I find, especially with a lot of investigators or people that are not very skilled, is within 3 to 5 minutes they're already addressing issues which we know are going to cause discomfort. And so now you're looking at discomfort displays from intrusion rather than discomfort displays as a result of guilty knowledge. And so your experiment is all screwed up. So, which is why I try to spend as much time as I can. I can tell you one espionage interview I did where the first, not the first hour, but the first 3 interviews were just to get an assessment on the person. And each interview was about an hour to an hour and a half. It was more like a conversation. It was only after the 3rd interview that I began to make probes, and by this time, obviously I had a good read on this individual.
I mean, you bring up an interesting thought because I'm always trying to tie in what you're saying to like our practice of social engineering. Now, we're not agents for the government or any law enforcement, but you're trying to decipher baseline someone. Maybe you don't have 3 interviews, or you don't have even an hour. Are there quick tips to gain a baseline on someone, even as you're walking up, maybe to engage that person in conversation?
Yeah, there are. Yeah, you're exactly right, and that's a good point. There are, and then there's some ways to do. There's been a lot of studies in what are called thin slice assessments, and they're fairly accurate. They're in the 80 percentile range. And basically, is this person going to be, compliant? Are they going to be difficult? That sort of thing. When you have a very short period of time, and I have had very short period of time, I can't go into too many details, but I had to interview somebody in about 3 minutes in what we call a denied area. That means a part of the world where we're really not supposed to be there. And one of the quickest ways you can do that is by not facing the person, but actually being on their side. It's an interesting phenomenon. When we talk to people and they're at our side and we're both facing in the same direction, they tend to relax.
Really?
Oh yeah. And then if you can walk with them, it's even better. When you stand in front of people, it tends to elevate blood pressure. It tends to create tension. There's a lot of more misgivings and so forth. But get a person to and when I was doing counterintelligence interviews, I always tried to sit next to the person. I rarely did I sit. In fact, I can't even remember one instance where I actually sat across from the person. I was either at an angle or beside them, because the usual interview interrogation is you're in front, I'm in front, and it's all that crap we see on TV. But the most effective way to get information is to get people to relax, and by being on the same side, you can achieve that quite effectively.
Yeah, I found that
that's fascinating.
Yeah, that is fascinating to me. Also, one of our first podcasts, we interviewed a law enforcement agent who was a professional interrogator, and he said something very similar to what you said, but it wasn't about nonverbals. He just said that when you're interrogating, what you see on TV is a load of garbage. You don't come in the room and slam your fist on the table and demand.
Oh God, no.
You come in the room and you give them a soda. You make them feel at ease. You tell them you understand their problems, and you agree with them and build a rapport. And that's very similar to what social engineers do on a malicious way. They don't come in there and demand your passwords. They come in and they make you feel comfortable and at ease, and they charm you into giving information out that.
Oh yeah, that's exactly right. And the best interviewers in any organization will tell you they never have to raise their voice. It's all mental work, and it's just a matter of sort of getting them to trust you and eroding the defenses subconsciously. It's an extremely effective way. One of the people forget that we collect information first by observation, and then by conversation, and then by elicitation, which is the technique that social engineers use. We then go to interviewing, And then if you have to actually go to an interrogation phase, you have it's less than 50-50 chance of actually getting the information you need then, because it's so aggressive at that point. I think in my career, I think I did like somewhere between 12 and 13,000 interviews. Now, that's not interrogations, that's interviews. But of those, which seems like a lot, but it's not. It comes out to like one a day in a career.
Still seems like a lot.
No, it isn't. It isn't. It's the only thing is in the bureau they tally everything you do. Every hour is accounted for, so you can at the end of your career you can go back and see how many interviews you did. I think I only had to interrogate one individual,
Wow.
and I failed because I had to interrogate him. Everybody else I interviewed. And I pretty much always got what I needed. The other thing that happens is, there's a lot of, like in television, they're always going for the confession, and the confession's always a high bar to set. But you actually don't need a confession. You just need a lot of little admissions. Yeah, I was there. Yeah, the weather was this. Yeah, I was, I saw this that nobody else could have seen, and so forth. And so you can tally up enough admissions to where it equals a confession. I've put away, 20, 30 people just on little small admissions that they made, which equaled in the end a confession. A lot of people, they want to go for the I shot her. When there's a lot of other ways to obtain the information by admission. So you have to be careful with with that also. But again, in the social engineering area, it's really about getting people to relax and trust you, and to that end, it's really about body language. It's about mirroring behavior. For instance, you can calm somebody down just by exhaling in front of them.
Really?
Not with my breath.
Yeah, well, you get somebody that's all agitated. I learned this when I was going through SWAT training, and I was getting my advanced course in as a paramedic. And I had to do some ER work, the emergency room at Rosie Roads in Puerto Rico. And a physician there told me, he says, "This is the best advice I can give you. If you got people that come in and they're huffing and they're puffing and they're all out of breath and they're upset and so forth, just give them a long exhale. And what happens is they're looking for somebody to mirror that's sort of together." And we subconsciously seek whoever's who has homeostasis to calm down, and it works. And you just exhale profoundly; they pick up on that, and they begin to settle down. And so but what's that?
Does that work just in visual aspect, or would it work like, let's say, even on a phone call? If you
it works on the phone. I've done it on the phone where I do one of these and I talk about it. In fact, I talk about it in my second book, the Louder Than Words. I talk about exhaling over the phone and doing what's called a cathartic exhale, so that you do one of these. Yeah, I see what you mean. And the person will then mimic you and begin to relax. And because now you're appealing to them at a subconscious level for homeostasis, you're not agitating them, you're actually helping them to calm down. They'll want to actually spend more time talking to you.
And what you said right there, is exactly what we try to do when we're trying to do like a social engineer on the phone, like trying to relax the person on the phone in order to get a desired outcome. And it's beautiful. I never really even thought about it that way.
Yeah, one of the things that, especially in Louder Than Words, that I talk about is how do you ensure that people will want to spend more time with you? How do you get them to increase face time in return and so forth? And we do that through psychological comfort. I'll hang out with somebody, and not because they're, they got money or they're pretty or this or that, because they make me feel comfortable. And so we gravitate towards people like that. And so when somebody who makes me comfortable calls, I'll move my schedule to be with them. I'll give them extra time. I'll reveal things to them because of that. So that's one of the things that you can work on. It's not about how fast you can get the information. Is how effective are you about creating this psychological comfort so that the person will always come back? And in fact, when I use this in my both counter intelligence and counterterrorism cases, you can get it to the point where the suspects will then be calling you on a daily basis or on a weekly basis just to check in. Because they find comfort in talking to you, yeah.
Now, Darren, when I'm doing a social engineer, you hit it right on the money. My biggest problem that I have is getting enough time with the person on the phone. Making them feel comfortable to where they want to stay on the phone with me in order for me to have a desired outcome during my social engineer. So, what would you say is the most effective tactic in getting people to stay on the phone with you in order to, or even just in person, so that you're important enough for them to stay on the phone and have a desired outcome that you wanted?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things, and now we're getting into really a more advanced area, and that is, well, who do we talk to and why? Well, we talk to equals, and we talk to people of higher status, but we don't talk to people. We don't really talk to or give information to people of lower status. We see this in almost no society, except when we make them the professors, when we ask people for their opinions, when we tell them that we value what they have to say, when we imbue them with a sort of qualities that we would imbue a teaching, all-knowing archetype, then they're willing to talk. And in fact, there's a great book by one of the biographers of Kennedy, and he said, you can get anybody anywhere to talk to you anytime. All you have to do is tell them that you treasure their opinion. And I suspect, to a certain extent, he was probably right. And obviously, you can't come across like you're BSing this guy. But I think I think for the most part, people are willing to talk about things because it shows what they know, how much they know, and so forth. This
topic is fascinating because as you talk about these things, you're really hitting the head on what social engineers do, so people can learn to notice this. That might help them in protecting themselves, their companies, their families. Probably one of the most asked questions we get through our channels is about detecting deception. Tips that help people to see when someone is trying to scam them or con them or use a confidence trick against them. Are there any tips that you have that people can look and say, this might be a key for deception here?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, and it's we're going to have to divide it up into a couple of things. One thing is deception, another thing is being conned. And one of the things that I found, in fact, I think I wrote an article about this for Psychology Today a few years ago, was that when people are being conned into doing something, the con man or the con woman, the predator, let's just say, is going to do a couple things. They want to isolate you. They want to isolate you psychologically so that you're dependent on them and not others. So they don't want you to make phone calls. They don't want you to get other people's opinions. They usually violate your space. so that they're constantly in your face. You see this with the elderly. They'll come in and take advantage of the elderly, and they'll violate their space until they sign the paperwork to or give them a check to, cut the grass or do whatever, and then they back away. And so at that point, the person can relax. So there's physical tension that's created. And then there's the use of time, what we call chronemics, and that is that everything has to be urgent. It has to be done now. It cannot wait. There's all this. Everything has to, be taken care of immediately. And so I think when you look at things like this, where there's some sort of isolation, some sort of exclusiveness. Obviously it's too good to be true type thing, but also that there's a certain urgency and so forth, and there's very little chance or opportunity to meet or discuss it with others. Then something it raises the flag.
Yeah, that's very.
When I'm doing a social engineer and everything like that, I mean, I find that if I'm persuasive in the banner of this needs to get done now, I come off some sort of authoritative, that it doesn't have as high as a success rate as if I was, really nice to the person and needing help. Like I find that needing help when I'm performing a con or a social engineer is much more effective than, being that persuasive kind of, angry, I'm in a bind, you need to help me type of mentality. What do you see as the more probable way of getting your desired result through those type of methods?
Yeah. Well, I mean, in the end, it's always down to the personality. What kind of person are you dealing with? I mean, you can't. This is one area that you really. I just dealt with a company, and I won't name who they are, but I'm very disappointed in them because they're a major company. But the way they paint other people is with this very broad brush, and I said you can't do that. One of the things that we in the FBI we're very skilled at is recruiting people to help us, and that's no different than what you do. And we do that by tempering the approach, talking to them, nurturing it, based on what kind of personality they have. Are they a dynamic personality, or, are they the kind of person that's very procedural? Everything has to be weighed and everything has to be analyzed, and things take a very long time to be dissected and chewed and swallowed and so forth. It really is person, and so that's why, a lot of what I used to do was a lot of very quick personality assessment to see what kind of person I'm dealing with, and then I'm going to have to mirror it. I'll give you an example. For instance, somebody from the South goes to New York and goes into a deli, and right away, the first thing they notice is people in those delis in New York talk very fast, right? And in the South, words tend to be drawn out a little bit longer, and things have their own rhythm and so forth. And one culture isn't any better than the other culture. But what happens is, what happens when you've got a very fast speaker and everything's bada bing, bada boom, and then you've got somebody that's just drawing things out? Well, I can tell you, my eyes shut, or I start to roll my eyes, and I just want to get away. I want information at my speed, not at your speed. Right. So you almost have to begin to mirror a lot of those behaviors, a lot of the way the person stands and so forth. And this is where isopraxis, mirroring, comes in. And of course, the more you mirror, and I'm not talking about in a sort of mimicking caricature sort of way, but I mean everything from the way we stand to the blink rate and so forth. It puts us on the same sheet of music. And of course, also you have to consider, for instance, mirroring of words, which is one of the things that Carl Rogers, the therapist, looked at back in the 60s, and that was that if Chris says family, well, Joe better not say, wife and kids, because it's not the same thing. It's absolutely not the same thing. If you say family, I'm going to say family. If you say, my generation had problems, your generation has issues, the word issues has absolutely no resonance with me. If I go to a counter and I say, hey, I got a problem with the way I'm being treated, I don't want to hear, well, yeah, I guess there were issues. Hey, issue this. I want you to respond and say, oh, yeah, I can see there's a problem here, Mr. Navarro. We destroyed your luggage. That's exactly what we did. So even the words that we choose reach to us subconsciously at a deeper level. So
I mean, that really kind of ties in. It seems like with like sales and any of the things I've ever read on that about building rapport. When you use similar words or similar body language, similar facial expressions, people like to be with people who they are like. So when you do all that, it builds a confidence in you that you are just like the person you're dealing with.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, I ran into somebody the other day, and they were using a lot of swear words. I mean, they were dropping F-bombs and just. I didn't particularly like the way they referred to women, and I found myself distancing myself from this person, and I thought, I just don't want to even deal with them because they were leaving so many negative impressions on me that. I probably could have done business with them, but it doesn't resonate with me. So you're exactly right. Is the more we mirror things, but at the same time, they're thresholds. We can't mirror criminal activity. We can't mirror something that is amoral or is unethical.
And let me ask you a question on that. Yeah. That's an interesting topic. Now, from a social engineering standpoint, let's say, an audit or something to that effect, we're dealing with that person, like you just said, this guy who curses a lot, talks degrading about women, and like you, I don't really appreciate the foul language. We don't use it even here. We don't talk that way. So, but now I have to get in with this person. That's my job. Yeah. Is there a way to change his behavior subtly so that maybe he starts mirroring me without having to come down to that level of using the foul language and degrading conversation?
Well, and now you're up against what every undercover agent who's worked a motorcycle gang has complained about. Back in, I think it was 1982, I had to debrief some very deep cover FBI agents who had been with motorcycle gangs for a long time. And it was just something that, they began to behave and act, and mirror, the people that they were with because they wanted to fit in. So, there are exceptions, but when we're talking about just everyday stuff, there are limits. But then, when something is sanctioned by society, then it's obviously different, and you may have to mirror it. I mean, I remember I was working on a Indian reservation. I think this is in the book, What Everybody Is Saying, and I was debriefing a guy who was a pedophile. And, as he's telling me these things and I'm trying to get him to open up, I had to sort of, as I'm biting my own lip, talk about, children by saying, well, obviously I can see how a, 3 or 4-year-old could have tempted you. I mean, I can't remember what I said, but I just remember I couldn't even believe what I was saying.
Oh, yeah.
Just to make the guy feel comfortable enough to talk to me. But here's a guy that really needed to be put away because he had done some despicable things. And so, yeah, I mean, sometimes society permits you to sort of act that way. And you may have to tolerate the foul language and the other stuff. But that's
build a
to
rapport,
be driven.
And once you build a rapport with a guy like that, maybe by mirroring that kind of horrible activity, then can you use that rapport to now control him and maybe bring him to your level?
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's exactly what happened. Once I got him to relax and feel that I wasn't being judgmental, then it was a matter of just eliciting, all the admissions of how many children there had been. And, there were upwards of 30 kids involved.
Oh, that's awful.
It's just,
oh, my God.
So it was a technique just to get this guy to relax and so forth. And I always found, and I think you guys are onto this, that once you get people to relax around you, they're much more pliable. They're much more willing to cooperate and so forth. I mean, the minute someone becomes suspicious, or you irritate somebody, or you make them uncomfortable, now you're dealing with their limbic system. And their limbic system is going to say, okay, freeze while you analyze this person, flight, distance yourself, or fight them off in some way. They're just going to resist you more and more and more. So you got to factor that in.
It's interesting, this topic. I know we're coming near the end here, but one of the research topics that we've been doing as a group, we coined this term called neurolinguistic hacking, where we're kind of doing research into how people are using. I don't even think social engineers, malicious ones, are knowing that they're doing it. It's not like they have this intense knowledge, but by analyzing these stories in the news, we're finding that people are doing a lot of what you're mentioning here by controlling their facial expressions, their body language, their nonverbal communication skills. They are creating emotional states within their targets that make them more pliable, making them more relaxed, making them more calm, building a sense of confidence or even empathy or sympathy in the person. Allows the social engineer to then make a request that will be more easily followed. And I'm just wondering if there's any combative techniques against something like that, so someone could maybe detect and then not fall for these things.
Yeah. Well, I think you have a good point. I mean, I'm not sure what to call it other than that we know that this is the methodology of the predator. The reason that predators have been so successful, Ted Bundy was able to gain a lot of access and trust of the victims because he was good looking, he dressed sharp, and his approach was very subtle. And it works. I mean, when I look at predators like, for instance, with Madoff, who got all these people to invest and so forth, I'm sure that he was giving off the ones that he did meet with. I'm sure he gave off a lot of cues of competence, of confidence, and of comfort and so forth. How do you gird up for that? Well, number one is to realize that there's always predators out there, that people want to take advantage of you. And that one of the best ways to avoid it is to just distance yourself. That there's just anybody that tries to become your friend too quickly, tries to access you or what you know too fast. There may be issues there, and but I mean, you have to take into account what your lifestyle is like and where you work and what you do and what you know. I mean, I know people who work for the government for one of the alphabet organizations that if you don't identify yourself, within the first 3 to 4 seconds, and they don't recognize you, or if you don't know exactly what to say, they don't even talk to you. they just hang up. They don't even want you to pick up on how their speaking style.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because they know how insidious it can be.
Right.
I mean, you can, for instance, all you have to do is go to a high-tech company and on a Friday afternoon is just, watch where they go, for what's their watering hole. Or look through the parking lot and you see the stickers on their car, and then, look for Saturdays as a great day to, when people are having garage sales, and then, boom, you're talking to them during a garage sale, and, their guard is totally down, and yet they're very exposed because we put stupid stickers on our cars that say where we work and stuff like that.
Right. Very, very interesting.
I got a question. Backing off a little bit from the social engineering aspect of it, for people that don't work in this field but want to find value out of nonverbals, what do you find for yourself in regular day-to-day life where you get the most value out of this sort of being able to read nonverbal communication?
Well, I like that question. That's one that's not often asked, so I really appreciate that.
Points for Jim.
I think where I use it the most is just when I deal with people every day, and I look to see, are they comfortable or uncomfortable. I mean, that's what everybody is saying was all about, is don't complicate things with the body language. It's just, does this person look comfortable to you? Because we register discomfort immediately, and if they're not comfortable, then what is it? Is it the room? Is it me? Is it the conversation? Is it because they got to leave? I mean, what's going on here? That's number one. Number two is, use it to make people feel comfortable, so that whether you have guests here or you're just walking down the street or whatever, people feel comfortable. If you don't know that in America you're only allowed to look at each other in the eyes for about 1.28 seconds. If you look at somebody for 3 seconds, they're going to give you that New York question. What are you looking at?
Really the rule,
1.28 in America. It's about that. It's
wow.
So anything. But yeah, try it on a subway in New York. Just stare at somebody for a little longer. So you can use it to get people to relax. And so forth, and you can also use it to sense when you and others may be in danger, which is what Gavin de Becker's great book, The Gift of Fear, was all about. So we use it to enhance communication. For instance, I teach and give presentations all over the world. I'm going to Taiwan and I'm going to Europe and the Netherlands in this coming year. And what makes for a good presenter? Moving around the stage, not standing behind the podium, using your hands, making sure that your gestures go up and out, and that you arch your eyebrows when you greet people, because that causes us to burn sugars, and we only burn sugars when we care, right? So you see somebody and you arch your eyebrow and go, "Hey." And, now you're friends, versus just, hey, how you doing, without arching your eyebrows. Well, we know that babies respond to it at about a week old. So this is something that we desperately need. So we can do it to enhance relationships, enhance communications, and, further whatever our interests are. That's what you use it for.
That's very, very interesting. Joe, I tell you, I really, really appreciate your time here today. I mean, I found this to be very excellent. A lot of good information here.
It's great.
Well, I really appreciate it, and I know you guys are interested in this sort of thing. If your listeners or your viewers or readers are interested, on my website, which is at www.jnforensics.com. I offer I think it's about a 9 or 12 page, I forget how big it's now, bibliography with several hundred articles on where this research comes from. And, of course, they can go to Amazon for my books, What Everybody Is Saying, and then Louder Than Words. And, by the way, the book What Everybody Is Saying, according to Amazon, is right now the #1 selling book in the world on body language. So,
oh, really? That's excellent. Congratulations on that.
No, I'm not going to lie. I mean, I'm definitely going to go pick that book up. I mean, everything that we've talked about here has been highly interesting.
Well, I thank you guys, and really I appreciate the very good questions that you asked.
You know, one of I appreciate that, Joe. Thanks. Our followers tend to log on to Twitter and use things like that. So I know you have a Twitter account. You want to tell us what that is, if you don't mind, if people want to follow you there?
I do. I Twitter at Navarro Tells, NAVARRO Tells, and I usually, try to publish things regarding any research that I find that is interesting. And then, and I'll vary it. I'll talk about political things, but mostly about the science and nonverbals and so forth. And I try to put stuff in there almost every day about body language, things to look for, things that maybe you never even thought about. Like, for instance, when we're confident, the space between our fingers increases, and when we lack confidence, we put our fingers together. And that may make the difference, during a forensic interview or when you're asking somebody about something, whether or not they have confidence in what they're saying. And it's something that's rarely been looked at or studied, but it was certainly something that I used when I was in the Bureau.
That's excellent, because I know that a lot of times I follow your Twitter. I mean, sometimes you just put humorous. I mean, I hate to even say this is humorous, because this morning you were. It's just irony that the guy that makes the Segways actually died have a Segway.
Riding a Segway, what was interesting about that was that I have seen now 2 people have accidents with those Segways. And, it's not a laughing matter that it's really an unstable platform, and, hopefully you don't have any accidents, but I've seen 2 accidents. Now I heard about this, and, it's an amazing, thing that, that we don't see more of those accidents. When you look at head trauma and what happens to people with head trauma, it's just it's sad. But in any case, I put a lot of stuff in there. I'll put my thoughts out. I talk about how to be a better business leader. I talk about how to be a better father, how to use nonverbals with children. One of the best articles. And I don't mean best because it was written well. One of the articles that's got a lot of readership in psychology today was the one that I did about what every parent should teach a child about body language. And it's just been amazing how many people have looked at that. Because it's important to me. It's important to other people. So that's the kind of thing that I Twitter about. Yeah.
Joe, before we leave, I have a quick question. Something that you said really mashed my brain there about the fingers spread apart, etc. Does it have a reverse ability as well? That means if I posture myself in a relaxing situation, with my fingers spread apart and looking to the right or what have you, could that have a reverse effect where it will actually calm me down?
Well, the one of the therapists that was out there in the 70s, a fellow by the name of Ellis, always said, if you stand tall, if you do this, and if you do that, you can counter some of the negative feelings that you're having. I'm not sure, and that's not my area of expertise, but I can tell you this. In the same way that animals, for instance, dogs, will tuck their ears against their face, when they're up to no good or they've done something bad or they lack confidence, we humans do the same thing. We tend to tuck our thumb away. We tend to, our fingers tend to come together when we lack confidence. And so when I look at declarative statements and someone's making a declaration, most people are looking at the face. I look at the whole body, and I can tell from the spread of the hands whether the person's really confident or they're not. And you can tell that by the width of or the space between their fingers. When we're confident, we spread out. When we lack confidence, we don't.
Yeah, I found that interesting because you talked about that in your interview on CBS with Hillary Clinton, and her gestures were very close to her body. And you talked about how those closed, very close to the body gestures indicated that she wasn't comfortable. But then when she talked about healthcare, her arms were out in the open, wide and open, and it just showed that she was very confident and comfortable about that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, I've used this in negotiations where, I've gone in with a legal team during negotiations, and we've looked at opposing counsel to see how definitive they really are on their position, and we've been able to dissect that. This is all for show because they lack the confidence. Their words sounded good, but their body language didn't mirror it. And that part of that has to do with the limbic brain controlling confidence. But anyway, it's been great talking to you guys. We'll have to do it again sometime.
Thank you. And just to reiterate, if you want to follow Joe, you can get him on his website at jnforensics.com. His Twitter account is Navarro, Navarro tells. And you can get some good information from Joe there. Joe, thank you a ton for coming on the podcast and helping us out with this topic.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. Take care, and good talking to all of you. All the best.
Talk to you soon.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Wow, that was a excellent podcast, huh, guys?
Oh, that was great. Fascinating. Every time we get someone else on, they always put a different perspective that you never really thought of, or you learn something new,
I do.
One of the things that crossed my mind is with Mutz's question there at the end. I was reading some article that was completely unrelated to anything over this last week, and it brought up this thing I had never heard of before. I guess it's somewhat related to the study between how we move affects our behavior. And I think the interesting thing to me about Mutz's question is I saw some discussion about...
it was your question. I was just picking it out because you didn't want to ask it.
It was. I guess what I'm thinking is I saw some stuff like suggestions on, when you get nervous, your palms sweat and your hands get cold and clammy, and that one of the suggestions that people have about how to calm down is to warm your hands up, run them under warm water for a little bit so they get warm, and then that has a physiological effect on you of calming you down so that you're not as nervous, and other little tactics like that of how you can physically change your emotions based on little small physical items like that. And Joe really kind of brought that to mind when he was talking about reading body languages. I wonder, that's something that we should look into down the road about getting someone from that field on. That could be a really interesting discussion.
That actually really touches on the NLH stuff. I was just saying, like with the micro expressions, one of the research that really based the whole thing on the NLH that I was using was the guys who did the micro-expression research that determined that even viewing a micro-expression on someone else could trigger mirror neurons in your brain to cause the same emotional response in you. So I do think...
I remember what we talked with, I think it was Ellen Langer, where she said that if you talk to someone that's on your left or on your right, or whether you hold the phone on your left or your right hand side, remember?
Yeah, that was
Kevin Hogan, yeah. Correct. We saw that there. We saw how, like an external, relatively minute change in how you handle your environment, i.e. is the phone on your left or on your right, that can have an influence on how you perceive things. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think we've seen that. I think we have seen in the past where you can influence your own state by changing things around you, and it makes sense. The question is to what degree.
Well, I think like what Jim was just saying is these physiological changes, like if you're nervous, running your hands under hot water will heat your hands up, which in turn will tell your body, hey, you're not nervous anymore. So it's almost like reverse psychology of your body, because nervousness causes your hands to sweat. So the sweat and the cold hands was a result of the nervousness. But now by reversing the result and making your hands warm, you now tell your body, oh, I'm no longer nervous, you can stop being cold.
So this is reverse physiology, not reverse psychology.
Right, yeah, reverse physiology. And the whole thing with NLP that started like with Bandler and Grinder in the 70s was that by altering someone's internal state of mind, you can cure things like depression or the desire to smoke or things like that, and they were using it effectively for that. People who tend to be depressed walk around with a frown on their face. Not all the time, but maybe even just microly. You know, it's like they tend to be sadder. Well, by forcing themselves to practice real smiles and then doing it in the mirror and seeing themselves happy, it would reverse this brain's effect of depression. And they've proven that, at least in some cases, that this works. I believe that this is definitely a feasible topic to analyze a little more.
Did you just say microly?
Microly, I did. As opposed to macroly. I'm creating new words as we go. I mean,
you're going to patent that, Chris?
Oh, NLP, microly, macroly. Just before the end of the year, we're going to have a whole new science based on just my words alone. People won't be able to understand anything I say unless they buy a book of like vocabulary words or something.
The Chrisisms?
The Chrisisms, that's it. You writing this down, right, Jim?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
We got what, two new Chrisisms this podcast?
At least two this one. At least two. I mean, we can probably add the tweet twat. You know.
Yeah.
Hey, that was mine.
That was yours.
That was mine.
I'm stealing.
That was a muckism.
I've already trademarked it. Oh, you want to hear a funny story while we're still here? So, in my book as a joke, I'm finishing up the social engineer book. At this one part, I was writing something. I was quoting you, Mutz, and I used the
tweet twat.
No, I was using the phrase "try harder," and I put it in quotes, and I put a PM after it. So the one editor writes back, and she says, "Do we really have to use a trademark on that? I mean, can't anyone just say the phrase "try harder"?" And I go
no.
and say, "No, we actually trademarked that phrase, so we have to put it in there." So there's a very good possibility that in the book, the phrase "try harder" will actually be trademarked.
That's awesome.
Wouldn't that just be epic? I'm trying to get them to leave it. That would
tell
just
them
be
that.
epic.
Tell them
in the middle of the book, have
legal
try harder.
ramification.
Yeah, it's awesome. Oh man.
If they want to avoid the situation of getting sued for trademark infringement, they have to keep it there.
Yeah.
If you need it on a letterhead, I can send it to you.
That's great. My boss sues my editor for my book for using trademark. It's something that I helped you get. That's wonderful. Yeah. I tell you, that would just take the American dream right out of it. Oh, man. So, guys, this was another phenomenal podcast, in my opinion.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Except for the comments that I made that Mutt didn't like, but that's fine. At least it wasn't as bad as that. At least it wasn't bad as that one exploit. What was that? What was it? Exploit 14738?
Oh man.
The fact that you remember the number is what troubles me.
Yeah, that's true. That troubles me a little bit. But, it's okay. It's okay, Rel, because no one will hear your comments. Because every time you speak, we're going to play the Price is Right theme. So every time you come on, you're like, hey, we're like, doo 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 doo. So don't even worry about it.
Sounds good.
Oh man, I think we got to mention at the end, just this is our deal, our sponsors again, Offensive Security and CWC, Spy Associates, and the EFF, of course. If you like the outro music, check out more of it. He's got a few albums. The Ent82 guy and his posse at dualcoremusic.com. You can always check us out, Twitter, Human Hacker, or on IRC, on irc.freenode.net, and channel social-engineer, or of course on the internet at social-engineer.org.
Number 14.
It's the S.E.e derivative. That's me, I'm prime. The last thing I want is suspicion of a crime. My positive demeanor and my smile make it fine. With eye contact for the right amount of time. Too much and not enough doesn't seem for real. Got a nice firm handshake sealing the deal. Know a little about a lot and a lot about a little. So most conversations put me somewhere in the middle. My pop culture knowledge leaves me feeling kind of scary. It lets me chat with working class and gossip secretaries. Recon the boardroom, looking for the top thing. Loosen up execs when I ask about the golf swing. Start spewing secrets, just like a torrent. Can't really blame them, we all want to feel important. It might seem different from what you were envisioning. The key to communicate, it's all about the listening.
Every trick in the book, I'll try my best to get you hooked. I'm gonna use every trick in the book, I'll try my best to get you. I'm gonna use every trick in the book, I'll try my best to get you hooked. I'm gonna use every trick in the book, I'll try my best to get you.
Offering support to employees is the best. When I'm calling random users and claiming I'm a tech, he's just here to help. So they're easily believing him. Jamming, playing a scam, is banning every single medium. Recording while I'm spidering your phone menu system. The mirror it and use it for my own acquisition. Get them on the line, I just do a little switching. Sending out my number in the message when I'm fishing. 6 billion people, it's really quite a market. Customers, employees, everyone's a target. Backing up my claims, using all the common slang. Lingo for the layout, drop the manager's name. Collecting all the sweet stuff like honey to a bumblebee. Like every unlisted number dialed to your company. You saw me, you probably think I'm clumsy, but I'm not. Cause I'm dropping all these USB drives around the parking lot.
Whoops.
I'm gonna use every trick in the book, I'll try my best to get you hooked. I'm gonna use every trick in the book, I'll try my best to get you. I'm gonna use every trick in the book, I'll try my best to get you hooked. I'm gonna use every trick in the book, I'll try my best to get you.